Um, let's see. I have some slides to share. But before I go there, just want to say, well, hi, I'm Magenta, or Mage for short. I'm a project manager at dOrg, which is a developer cooperative, essentially. So we're freelancers who come together as a DAO. And I'll explain more about that in a second. So I work with blockchain developers, front ends, smart contracts people, really talented UI/UX designers. They're also doing tokenomics design, and we work for a range of other DAOs and protocols. Like we help build the balancer smart contracts, for example, Alchemy, if anyone remembers that DAO platform. And then we end up doing some work with on the ground projects as well. And generally like share a value set of enabling more decentralized power with the way that people have autonomy to organize as communities, as workers, as kind of governors of the development of technology and the different industries that people are working in. And then I also, just FYI, work on Bloom Network as the lead coder and our systems architect, as well as being a community organizer. Originally in the Bay Area, now I live in New Hampshire for a good 15 to 20, well, 20 years probably. So coalition building between different social movements on the ground to help share resources and knowledge and better connect people who tend to lack power in the dominating kind of systems. So that we can build power together and make healthier societal infrastructures. So dOrg is really not separate from my work there in the sense that we're, building the capacity for people to live and work in this way in more empowering ways. So maybe in the Q&A section, just invite folks to ask me questions about both dOrg as a service cooperative and DAO, as well as Bloom, if you have more questions about the IRL and civic aspect of things. So yeah, I'll go ahead and start sharing about dOrg. And apologize, I'm really slammed right now with Bloom, and yeah, it's really taking off. So I haven't had much sleep this week. I'll do my best to be coherent. So dOrg is an amazing community of humans. A lot of people on their LinkedIn, they say they're human at dOrg, which makes for a really amazing organizational culture. And so I know we're doing DAO Summer, so in case anyone is randomly hopping in here, we're local DAO Summer and hasn't yet really sunk in like what is a DAO. So a DAO is a virtual entity with members that have the right to spend the entity's funds and modify its code. So it's not controlled by any central authority, and it's the rules of execution of like the finance and the, for example, sort of the bylaws, if you will, of the organization are entirely routed through the algorithm. So it's a little bit more autonomous of a structure than the traditional legal system. And one of the good things about using DAO tooling for cooperatives is, and I'll give some more context in a minute, but co-ops can be quite administratively burdensome to run, especially when you get to the point of doing federated cooperatives where you have many different co-ops, whether you have a service co-op or you have freelancers who are like consultants or a DAO of graphic designers or something, like inter-cooperating with DAOs that are working on like civic activism kinds of things. And so the benefit of using the technology, which I'll explain a little bit, is that it makes the connectivity between the groups on even simply like a business interoperability level a lot less burdensome to do the admin. So I like to think of DAOs as just digital cooperatives. Obviously not DAO, all DAOs like really fit that, but I think it's a good way of thinking about it. And then again, the tools just assist the administrative management of that in a way that makes it very lightweight and easier to scale cooperatives, whether that's an on-the-ground thing, a service DAO of consultants, or at like a global decentralized scale of coordination. It makes it all a lot more smooth. DAOs are good for autonomy, decentralization, and transparency. And obviously, I think that applies to on-the-ground organizing. I have some friends who believe that DAOs are, I mean, there's like the technical aspect of DAOs, but I think a lot of activist communities, cooperatives, anarchist collectives adhere to these principles as well. And indeed, the founders of Bitcoin in the early development of the tech, a lot of them come from that same background and intention of how can we kind of break up state, like violence-backed power structures and start to allow more human autonomy and care for one another. I'll kind of skip the technical details of DAOs because I think by now people watching this or participating probably have a sense of it. But specific to dOrg, it's a specific kind of DAO. So we're a service DAO. That means we're a collective of Web3 devs and other technical specialists. And we focus on building decentralized tools and applications. So we tend to be so far the guys you hire to build something that totally does not exist yet. So like, for example, we're building a layer 1 like Bitcoin Ethereum chain right now. We've built, the first DAO creator on Tezos and different kinds of very complex, sophisticated smart contracts for novel applications because that's just kind of like what we specialize in. And again, so sometimes when people start a DAO, they kind of have a theme and they go out there and it's like non-hierarchical, it's total chaos. Even if they have tens of millions of dollars, like it crashes and burns. So I think a service DAO is a really good way to DAO because you can bring in like a very simple business model that works. So for example, I hear from a lot of people who work in marketing who are, say you're a marketing strategist or a graphic designer, and for the most part, you do not get to choose who your clients are. Someone makes that decision for you. You're assigned to a project. Often my marketing friends will describe that they work for evil companies, and that really bothers them. And there's nothing they can do about it. This is how they can make money. What other options do I have to make the kind of salary? And I find that to be really common across a lot of different kinds of industries. Or if you're a graphic designer, for example, you tend to like end up churning out like the same kind of assets in like a process. Whereas what happens in my experience of working with dOrg as a service DAO, you're a freelancer cooperative. So you're coordinating to help mitigate some of the frustrations of freelancing where you're like trying to find clients, dealing with payments, there's a lot of overhead. But coming together as a collective to do that kind of reduces some of that burden and you get some efficiency, short of going to work for a large corporation where you have some of the other, cultural and autonomy problems. That is why people, oscillate, but tend to oscillate between like freelancing and working like a salary job. So there's that. There's a lot to go into. But so in dOrg, we have a process. I'm going to make sure you guys have a link to our handbook. I'm going to pop this in the chat. All of our processes are documented and fully accessible, forkable. There's stuff in our GitHub, like I think even our terms of service is a forkable PDF document that you could use in your DAO. Different processes and stuff. So just definitely use that as a resource, and feel free to ask us questions anytime as well. And so how dOrg works is let's see, at a high level, there's like the structure, right? Like the different working groups and roles in dOrg. And then there's like processes. So how we together seek out and secure clients, and how we handle payments and invoicing, how we handle the structure of safes across projects. So I'll try to zoom into any of those like a little bit. just to give you kind of at least a glimpse of what like a very well-oiled like service DAO can be, as a case study of like the opposite of the chaos that I see in a lot of DAOs, and honestly abuse dynamics, which is very common in activism that uses the same kinds of organizing as well. But when you don't have structure, when you don't have boundaries, when you don't have norms and gatekeeping or bars, you it's easier for abuse dynamics to manifest, or for people who have specific communication styles or forms of leadership that they need a little bit of encouragement to be heard, can be invisibilized. And I just see that so often in DAOs that I want to present that like wise development of structure and norms, not in a bad sense, but like protocols, kind of like social protocols are, you would do well to implement those and grow those over time, and just know that being a DAO doesn't necessarily mean non-hierarchical flat. What the technology empowers is kind of limitless, sophisticated, interconnected hierarchical structures that mimic real leadership and experience that people have. So you're no longer limited to these pyramidal structures where you have these layers of managers above you, and there's all these inefficiencies in terms of who's, the higher ups make a lot of salary compared to the workers, even though the workers often are having, the most knowledge of what would be beneficial for the company and the clients to evolve, right? And so service DAOs make it possible to just cut out a lot of inefficiencies. Value stuff. All right, so on a basic level, and this is just like one example of how you can set up a service co-op using DAO tooling. So we are incorporated as a blockchain-based limited liability company, or blockchain-based LLC, BBLLC. I think that's based out of Vermont. And basically, our corporate formation documents is like 3 pages, and it just says the governance of this company is ran by a DAO. And then I'll share with you kind of what our DAO, like our technical, collective rule adaptation processes are. Well, I think we might be the first, or at least one of the very first legal DAOs, so it's pretty cool. Ori, Shimoni, and Jordan, his last name, and Asgir are the 3 guys who founded it initially. And so how we handle governance in our DAO is that all treasury expenditures, with the exception of like micromanagement of a treasury, of like a bucket of funds, which I'll explain in a second, and any legal decisions like adding or removing a member, initiating a client project, altering how we issue rep or reputation token, which we use for governance, and also distributing any like token bonuses that we get from projects, for example, or funding a new internal initiative. So, we have $10,000 in our treasury. We want to use it to build this tool internally that we need, for example. And so those types of things require our DAO process. So we have a forum. If you're doing it in person, DAO, I would suggest that you handle this, you do your forum side of it, like in person, maybe, unless it's more efficient to you to do it digitally. But in dOrg, because we're, our people are all over the world, so we do it online, and we have a forum, and, we have a bucket for, new client projects, a bucket for, governance, new governance proposals, a bucket for internal treasury expenditures. So, for example, we have roles. There is a person who handles community facilitation in the DAO, which is a really, really, really important role no matter what kind of DAO you are. And it's really important that that person has good cultural fit with what you're going for. We have a sales role. Similarly, sales role in a service DAO, which is like the person who advocates on all the freelancers' behalf to find new client leads, to talk with new clients, get the the specifications of what they need. And again, you can apply the service DAO model to any industry. Like we're specifically build blockchain software, but you could apply this to a freelancers cooperative of copywriters. You could apply it to a freelancers cooperative of plumbers in your community. There are really no limits to what types of industry or type of collective that you could use this to like increase the transparency and accessibility and easefulness of your kind of administrative and business coordination. So anyway, that salesperson is also very important. They have culture fit and are like comfortable with the decentralized nature of running a DAO. We've had salespeople come in, just word to the wise, if you're setting up a like developer collective DAO, for example, we've had sales, or like a marketing one, we've had salespeople come in who are very like old paradigm, used to being told what to do, and also having a lot of like, I don't know how to describe this, but there's your salesperson needs to be very self-autonomous and take accountability and responsibility for their role and really truly be invested in being part of your cooperative. It's really tricky for developers and like your technical experts on whatever kind of DAO you're doing. This is less of an issue, but the people who are helping squad mode for your collective, it's really important that they're like really there for those cultural kind of fundamentals, right, of like decentralization, cooperative leadership, cooperative autonomy, and like mutual empowerment. I'm gonna have to hop to mobile soon, so let me see what I can show you on the screen shares. There's some pictures of, I think, just to give you a glimpse of the culture of dOrg and how fun and wonderful and human it is. Like, we're not cogs in a machine. We're all like heart-centered nerds, and your collective's gonna have your different flavor of culture, but it's just a really fun, really brilliant, really values-oriented community of people. But we're also not pretentious about our values either. Like, we'll build your BFI project. So that's just been really, really, really lovely. All of the members of dOrg are just, I respect them so much, and I feel like I'm rolling with a pack in like a really deep way. I've never felt that way in my life, and so I just share that as a like the best of what DAOs can be when you start to when you set them up well. One note about membership is like people apply to be a member of dOrg. So our website, let me show you that real quick as well, has an application process. So just, this is like a first service DAO, you would set up a normal contractor's website, right? Say what you do, say case studies, who you work with, who your partners are, that kind of stuff. And then we have like a funnel for hire us, or if you want to work for DAO, there's a form, and then we ask you questions, we do a technical interview. We have a really high bar for entry for technical interviews because we end up working on really complicated projects. Like it's high risk for us as a collective, reputation-wise and execution-wise, and high risk for the client if we have inexperienced developers. But that's just unique to our case, right? Like, if any of you have worked in cooperatives before, there's a place for like junior designers or junior developers or apprentices and stuff. So, just be mindful of what you need and then evolve that as you go if you find, oh, we need to be careful about this sort of thing. And so, that's an example of a governance proposal we put through of like, oh, we had a very hackathon-oriented, like open process in the beginning, right? But then we changed, okay, we need to do a formal application. We need people to do technical interviews. We need to pay them. How do we get the time of our smart contract developers who can make a lot of money per hour? We don't want to pay them that rate, but we need their time to interview these people. How do we set that up? So that's an example of where we're like put forth a post in the forum, the community dialogues about it, and then we vote yes or no in Snapshot, which is Snapshot's just a really simple tool for making votes as a collective. I mean, it's like super transparent. Anyone can go to dOrg Snapshot and look at what's being posted. It links to our forum, which is like private, but or we just approved a new role of a lead gen specialist. Are we going to work for X client? Yes, no. And you might answer no if it feels too risky, or there's a huge values alignment and that's going to cause problems. We found we do not mesh well with coke head finance bros. It's just they run us to the ground and get hacked. Okay, no, we don't. That kind of client is not a good fit with us. So yeah, just an example of evolution of process. Just real quick, the handbook has all of our stuff. It's a really good resource for you. I popped the message in the chat. It has everything about our structure if you're interested in setting up a service DAO. It has, this is part of the autonomy as well. When people become a new member of Bloom, they can read in here, oh, I can help source clients as well, and I can get a commission for doing that. So having those documents really accessible and visible helps cooperative mutual ownership in a technical sense, but also in a cultural sense, and you're watching out for each other and providing opportunities for each other. And so that's the best of doing any kind of freelancing or shifting from your corporate cogs in a machine to, you want to have more autonomy over what clients you work for and why. And, you just want a more peer-to-peer leadership culture, which I think a lot of people in all kinds of contexts would really benefit from. So yeah, this is a really great resource. We've had really incredible organizational development consultants and facilitators and technical people who are really good communicators develop this over time and improve our models over time for how we handle different things. So yeah, just encourage you to check that out as a resource. I'm going to switch to my mobile phone here. I'm going to be on audio only, but happy to answer questions about dOrg, about service DAOs, about DAOs in general, about making DAOs for new adopters, how do you make UX that's accessible? I've had a lot of exposure to that. You can ask me questions about Bloom if you prefer as well. So let me get switched over here. Do I switch over? All right, I see a question in the chat, but I'm gonna hop, I'm gonna be on mobile in a second. So would you mind unmuting yourself and asking me that question out loud, please?
Hi, this is Greg. I'm the one that asked the question you're probably referring to, 1:24 p.m. Should I ask now?
Yeah, go ahead and ask your question, and then I'm gonna switch devices and answer it.
Okay, whatever you prefer. The question is, so I'm wondering about the dOrg voting / decision rules, decision policy, because for example, there's a whole group of people that have votes. I do see that the voting weight has something to do with the rep currency, and that's important, I'm sure. But are there any prerequisites for launching proposals that everybody else is expected to, or required to vote upon? Number one. And number two, when do proposals pass?
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna hang up here and pop back in and answer your question. So I meant to go over most of that too. Thanks for pointing that. Yeah, 1 second.
Hello, test, test. You guys hear me over here? Hello from a different square. All right, proposals. There were a bunch of questions in there. Let's see. Real quick on the proposals. We have a 5-day proposal window. So once a proposal, you post to the forum if it's something that's going to require discussion, as opposed to a client, a new client proposal, which we have kind of a canned process for, you know, you've already done the vetting with the client, you've already done all the scoping and have the SOW drafted so that the collective can review it. You know, what are we expected to build through this engagement? Who is the specific team that's going to build on it? For example, if anyone notices, oh, you really have a hole in that team and expertise, like you need to either pull another person in or reshuffle who we're bringing together on this. So it kind of helps us. It really is additive, actually. That's super helpful to have the whole collective of like really experienced people watching out for each other. And then we can also fluidly pull in like, oh, we need this expert for this part of the build. Are you available? You know, please come in for a month to help with this thing. But so there, yeah, client has its own kind of like pre-process that you can find in the handbook, actually. It's like detailed all in there what you need to do before you post the proposal for discussion and voting. On client projects, you usually post the proposal for vote as well as the forum post at the same time, again, because it's the legwork is already done. Whereas a governance post, like we're going to change our internal process for how much we pay the operations team, or our internal process for, you know, our kind of, these are the sorts of things anyone in the DAO can do. They get paid this amount of money. You know, we're going to change the cap on how much we're able to spend because our treasury has fluctuated and we need to like lower or upper that. So that's an example of something that you need to post the forum, kind of wait about a week and like post in our Discord channel or Discord where we're, you know, coordinate like client projects on each channel. The ops team has a channel. There's a help channel for anyone to pop in and be like, hey, we have this technical question. Has anyone run into this before? Can you advise? And then, yeah, so you kind of wait a week until there's feedback. If no one's responding, you know, tag people, tag the whole collective. Hey, I have this proposal up, please take a look. And then you would put the post up after there's been time for people to share input, ask for any change requests, etc. Once in a while, a proposal will go up and it becomes clear, like, oh, something really wasn't clear here. And then I forget, that happened recently. I forget what we did, but we kind of agreed to nullify, or I think we had people vote so that the proposal like didn't pass. I think that's what happened, so that we could put a new proposal in because it wasn't clear what was being proposed. Does that answer your question on those like technical how to proposals work things? I'm sure I'm missing something there.
Thank you. That answers a lot of it. I think what you were just referring to at the end there, I guess it means like a way for the team, the members, the org to decide to withdraw a proposal and replace it potentially with another proposal, which is very important. But I guess my main curiosity is the decision threshold. Like,
oh, right, reputation, decision threshold.
Like number one is every position either a yes or a no, and is there a percentage of yes required, and or any other variables in determining approved or denied proposal?
Yes. So our quorum requirement is that 5 people vote. We often have an abstain option. Because our proposals process, we try to keep everything like absolutely as lean as possible, as opposed to a DAO deliberating how you handle a civic policy change would require more sophisticated voting options or tools such as star voting, where you can, you know, put 2 to 5 stars, or any number of like sophisticated voting tools. But ours is really, really simple. And then it's reputation weighted, which means so dOrg rep, we just call it dOrg token, and you get rep 1-to-1 for every $1 you earn for the collective, and then the ops team for their time working on the collective. I believe the ops team gets 2x rep because their hourly rates are lower than the developers. So we make sure that they are their bonus, if we have, you know, extra tokens from a project, will distribute those. The percentage of those that goes to the treasury will get distributed to everyone according to rep, and also so their voting weight is not overly minimalized. And then we can slash rep. If someone leaves the collective, we slash their rep so that they're not able to vote. Sometimes we'll issue rep reparatively if there was some like just uncontrollable weird thing that happened on a client project and someone didn't get paid for something. There was one case where we issued them additional rep so that over time they could kind of be compensated, and so that their labor was acknowledged within the collective in terms of their voting power. There's one question I'm missing there. Oh, and then when we have client work, a small percentage of it compared to any other agency, like usually there's a way higher like markup overhead of what the devs get paid, but we have a pretty small amount that goes to our collective treasury so that we can handle kind of the ops rules and stuff, which is like standard for any agency. It's like the agency model is what we use at dOrg basically.
Thank you so much. And there is another question in the chat from somebody else. Yeah.
Could you guys say that out loud? Because I can't see the chat.
Anna Maria, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Magenta. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, according to your experience in different DAOs, can you share like the benefits or advantages of being part of a DAO? And I have another questions with is what's like the main difference you've seen between DAOs and in like all the DAOs you've been part of? Will you say that there's like standardized process or way of work in all the DAOs or service DAOs you've been in?
Yeah, am I remembering the first part of the question right? That it was what it's like working in a DAO compared to not a DAO? Was that the first part of the question?
Yeah. And so like the advantages of being part of a DAO.
Yeah. So if you're a marketing professional, an hour to do social media writing, or you're a developer and you get paid, I don't know, $60 an hour or something. And then you have executives who are making $500,000 a year for doing nothing, and their assistant, who's like a 20-something woman who's fucking brilliant, is getting paid 40 grand to do their job. Like, fuck that. So that, like, those are extremes, but like getting paid better and being treated more equitably is like a huge cultural difference and, you know, life change difference. There's that. What else is different about a DAO? Culturally, again, it's like people in a service DAO anyway, you're kind of on the same level. So you have autonomy and respect for one another in a way that in a hierarchical company, you have all these layers of control and command. So again, I went over this in the start of the call a lot, but you have autonomy over what clients you take on. You can say, no, I won't do this collective, or I'm really not the right fit for this. It's not a good time for me to stretch my skill set to help on this. And you kind of like have each other's backs in that sense, but it's also, you can be more truthful and like be transparent, let everyone know what your goals are. Obviously you can do that in a corporate company too, you'll have like mentors and stuff, but it's a little bit more dynamic in a DAO. So yeah, money, culture, and autonomy. I'll stick with those three. There's a ton more. DAOs are awesome. I've actually only worked in decentralized collectives my entire life, with the exception of 1 year at a corporation. Like I couldn't deal. I just can't deal with that setup. Like I can't sit all day. Like I just like, no, what is that? And then dOrg compared to other DAOs. Well, there's so many different kinds of DAOs is the thing. Like you have something like Metagame, which is about human coordination and onboarding people to Web3. And it's wonderful and chaotic, and they have wonderful structures and rhythms of calls that are upcoming and people expressing what they want to do. They have very complicated compensation structures compared to dOrg. Like I believe they use source cred, so certain kinds of activities gave you certain kinds of, amounts of tokens that you would receive, or multipliers of what your token distribution was going to be, because some things that you do have more impact in a good way on the collective, and some things are like, yeah, we're doing this, but we don't really need to give money people to do like more of this. So you can like have extraordinarily customization over incentives for different kinds of activity and labor and value producing activities. And dOrg is relatively simple compared to like the options of what's out there. Again, a service DAO, like sometimes keeping that kind of DAO simple is better. So yeah, dOrg is low on chaos, high on like efficiency, which is something we've very carefully developed over time. And also we had a discussion of like, do we grow dOrg to be really big and or kind of pods of devs, or do we go for the like high-end game developer collective kind of thing? And we've at the moment are more like have chosen the latter, but you could certainly run a service DAO at large scale, I believe. I believe you could also run like any kind of thing that way. So like instead of, I have a friend who's trying to make a cooperative for aid infrastructure for like building refugee camps and hiring those kind of like government contracts, because the inefficiencies of those are completely insane. The amount of money that comes off the top of the contract to 3 different gatekeeper agencies and what goes to the people on the ground who build it, like the cost is extraordinarily minimal compared to what the federal government's bill or spend is. And so that kind of thing, like, federated squad mode of, even hardcore like social problems could be handled by federated cooperatives. Bloom is another example of like a federated co-op or federated DAO, which is not what dOrg is, but then like each local Bloom hub has governance rights over the governance decisions of the development of our platform and how our economic rules are. And so, yeah, that's one difference. And so I haven't been like formally a part of a lot of other DAOs. I participate in Gitcoin, I have some GTC, I haven't been actively voting. And I've been parts of experiments of building tooling for different kinds of voting, as well as who gets voting power. There's like so many mechanisms for that kind of thing. And so, dOrg uses one particular slice of them, but we end up building for other communities and DAOs. There's just like so many possibilities in this kind of tech for how you handle who has power, why, can you delegate power? HATS protocol is like DAO tooling for making sophisticated decision making and sort of like document access. So that if you had a very complex DAO, you could easily assign with an NFT who has the role for, admin and finance. These need to be the multi-signature signers. These are the people who handle and submit our accounting. These are the people who have this other role, and that controls even like your Google Doc access or ability to handle like sensitive kinds of information or decisions or something. So again, it's possible to set up extraordinarily sophisticated and effective custom sorts of hierarchies and permission sets to manage resources, rather than, so for like in 2008 with Occupy, a single person had control of a PayPal account for donations into Occupy. They took it and ran. And so, that's one of the reasons like multi-signatures and stuff exist. So you have to have, 3 of 5 people or 7 of 20 people sign off on something in case someone gets hacked, or in the case of like, intentional abuse. And I've experienced intentional abuse actually in Refi DAO with a kind of an incubation project of like a bunch of projects. And this was my fault in setting up the multi-sig, because I set it up as like 2 of 5 instead of, it should have been 3 of 5, which allowed collusion between 2 of the actors, and they took the money and like the whole thing was really both like culturally abusive and also just like it wasn't what we all came together to do, and there was disagreement about that. And so setting up your multi-sigs from the beginning is important, as well as gatekeeping. Depending what type of DAO you're doing, like in Bloom, we vet people for sociopathy so that the people who have power positions don't end up like destroying the community connectivity that has built over years of like community organizing, right? So you do want to be like mindful and careful when you set up your power structures, and just DAO tooling enables you to do that in a open, transparent way, like pretty easily, and like enforce that by tech in a lightweight way, protections. So sorry, that was a long answer, but there you go.
Yeah, I have another question. I guess you kind of just touched on it. But like legal risk, I'm wondering how you guys handle things like traditional legal risk, if any projects sort of get into a realm where I imagine you have negotiated contracts in a more traditional way with your clients, but what do you do with things that might require more, as you mentioned, like high, like I guess like high risk decision making that may not be like legal or yet okay to totally share with the entire DAO, might have confidentiality obligations. And how do you think about things like that, that where there's traditionally like information silos and expertise and hierarchy to handle those kinds of things?
That is such an amazing question. Respect to you, and all of you. Let's see, a few things. One, we have had a straightforward like collections problem on payment, in which case I believe twice over the history of our collective have engaged a professional collections agency who will take a fee of like what ends up being due for, helping you get the payment. And that happened for, a couple of very different reasons. I have seen collectives and we actually built a tool for Tezos, for the DAO creator we built there, so that I don't know the technical terms, but escrow, where you put the money up in escrow, and then if there's a disagreement about if the product was delivered or if payment should be made or something, then it goes to a third-party arbitrator. This is kind of what Aragon was trying to set up, for example, as far as I understand. But the purpose of that would be to try to handle things peer-to-peer when possible. Obviously, sometimes you need to go through the legal system, and it's best to be prepared for that. dOrg has a lawyer that is on our collective as the contractor who handles when we do need legal deliberation. For example, like just recently, we made a couple of changes to our standard terms of service agreement, which has stuff about like who owns the IP, non-solicitation clause, which means like the client can't directly hire someone who's been working through dOrg before a year has passed. Otherwise, they owe us a percentage of the payment to them or something like that. We recently increased that according to like closer to what's like normal. Ours was like unusually low for a while, which actually resulted in problems. We're in a decentralized space, like, yeah. So yeah, lawyer on staff as a contractor. In DAO Drops, which was a unique like public goods funding experiment that we did for the Ethereum Foundation, we ran into a lot of challenges when it came to KYC. We had to KYC people because just the way we're set up as a legal collective, we're distributing money. The EF was not handling that part. That was part of our agreement, was like we handled all of the legal paperwork for the distribution of the grants. And one person refused to participate because we're a UA entity and it was KYC. They're like, I'm sorry, I won't take money from you because I object to this practice. We also discussed, okay, well, how would we get around that if, as this program scales, and it, for the moment, it's kind of on pause. We just shifted to like building tooling for other people who are running grants rounds. But we did discuss like how would we decentralize this over time so that this mechanism could be used to get money to like for aid or for political organizing in countries that like a country has put under sanction, so we're not allowed to send them money. How can we do that peer-to-peer? How can we leverage in-person cash or in-person cryptocurrency transactions to get money across borders if need be? We're about to deploy a privacy DAO, which is an end-to-end encrypted DAO identity and privacy protecting DAO for cases when people are dealing with intense human rights issues and need to preserve privacy for their personal security, not getting assassinated, not getting in prison, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we do have those conversations. That's a huge exposure to the scale of the different kinds of things we're all dealing with as a community, in terms of how we handle business peer-to-peer, conflict peer-to-peer, and then the larger mission that a lot of people working in Web3 and also Bitcoin have of decentralizing the power structure and caring for each other. Was there anything I missed in there?
Super interesting to hear how y'all have handled a few different diverse risks that come up. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think we have 7 minutes left. If I don't need to monopolize the answering either. If anyone else has something that they want to share about what they find be useful, is welcome as well.
I do have one more question I've been kind of holding on to. I wonder about the worker cooperatives require a certain level of stability, and the DAO space, or the crypto space rather, is just really weird. It's weird. It has weird sort of resource distribution, both in the sense of if 30% of the people working for you were such early adopters that they made a certain amount of money just buying ETH early or something, then their resource needs are really different. And then also bear markets and times where there's just oh, are we gonna have to go for 6 months or a year without revenue? I wonder if you guys have found stability in those factors, and what strategies have you used?
Yeah, in our case, I'm trying to remember the one, sorry, brain. So on one level, we pay each other in stablecoin, clients pay us in stablecoin. The devs do not like to accept project tokens and the volatility. And when they do, we typically will try to coordinate to transfer them at the moment of transfer to reduce loss. Once in a while, we'll get paid in project tokens. I think we develop some of the tooling for Gnosis Safe and their Zodiac and stuff, for example. And I think they pay us in safe tokens because we're so values aligned, we're okay with that in that case. But that's very rare. So that mitigates some of the volatility risk in terms of token exposure. PS, that's also what we do in Bloom. Again, once in a while we have an exception where a grantor will only pay us in their token, but we try to reduce exposure to volatility by paying people in stablecoin. dOrg is slowly developing more of a treasury strategy. Historically, we've just kept things in stablecoin. Once in a while, we'll hold ETH for a little bit, but we're starting to diversify that strategy. Again, we have a professional CPA, similar to how we have a professional lawyer on file in our collective. And then we personally don't, well, overtly, we do not take into consideration this person is set for life, we're going to pay them less. However, I have noticed, myself, I feel very well supported in the collective acknowledging the work I'm doing with Bloom that is unpaid, and my leadership role and risks I take putting in a lot of unpaid labor for collective benefit. And what I've found is that people are careful to provide me with opportunities I can source a client so I get the commission, which means I have the conversations with them about the scoping and handle the initial business development and setup of a project. They have a commission structure for that kind of sales and coordination. or, you know, people are usually pretty careful about making sure I have enough client work. And I've noticed I do that as well with other people in the collective who are sending remittances to family and countries who are dealing with like their currency has collapsed, for example. Like we watch out for each other in that sense. You know, we obviously like in a bear market, for example, that gets a little bit harder to do. And we find that our business does restrict a little bit. Although because dOrg historically has worked on edge of ecosystem tooling, and like we don't work on a lot of protocols that are fucked with by market fluctuations. I don't know like what language to use to describe this, but we're exposed to less like expansion and contraction than a lot of other projects in the ecosystem because we are working on like such a deep layer of the infrastructure that is less tied to the normal market economy, if that makes sense.
Really, like, so cool to hear all this stuff. It just, like, you guys have really been through it, and it really shows really rich answers.
Cool, this is fun. Yeah, I love the dOrg people so much. Oh man, they're just all so awesome. And I've only met us all once in person. We have had a couple offsites. We don't do it very often because we keep our operations like very lean. But I hope we do that again soon because like I haven't met Clara in our collective, who's our facilitator, and she's also a real architect, like builds buildings. And she's really passionate about cooperatives and what we're capable of doing with dOrg for, you know, the whole spectrum of stuff I've been talking about, right? So it's just like an absolute privilege to work with these people, and they're so talented too. Oh man. So yeah, and it's more possible to set up that kind of alignment with a DAO than like most common business structures. So I'm a big fan, and I'm really happy to connect with the PDX DAO people and like more people who are doing local DAOs, because I think those are really, really important. And that's where the whole Web3 needs to like give them more governance power over the next developments of the tooling in whatever way they can. And so, yeah, we hope to connect with you guys more in solidarity.
Thank you so much, Magenta. It's always just wonderful hearing from you, even if like I don't get to have back and forth. Seeing you speak is always just inspiring and uplifting. Really appreciate you all across DAOs and Bloom and dOrg, all of them. Yeah.
Love you too, Barrow Lucid.
So shall we say GM till next time?
Jim.
Okay, so the recording and the transcription will be in the calendar event if you want to take a look at that later. And I will also share the doc with the transcription in the Telegram channel. Thank you so much. I'll see you at the next one. Have a good day or night.
Thanks, everybody.